Good evening. Welcome to this evening's keynote panel. My name is Jackie Martinez Vasquez. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I am the Vice President of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion at BECU. I am truly honored to be here this evening with such esteemed panelists for a conversation inspired by this evening's theme, Empowering with Purpose. As a cooperative, our purpose is to bring people together to improve the financial well-being of our members and their communities. For BECU, that comes to life both in the ways we work to support our members and strengthen communities, and also in the ways our members empower us. We're truly driving forward together with purpose. In tonight's discussion, we'll dive into important issues around financial health, community impacts, and more. You will have an opportunity to engage with us as well. If you have any questions at any point during tonight's conversation, please click the question tab to submit a question for the panelists. So with that, let's get started. Let's begin with introductions. Panelists, would you please introduce yourselves? Tell us your purpose, the purpose and or the mission of your organizations. And then soon, summer will be upon us if the weather in the Pacific Northwest gets it together. So we would love to know what's one thing that you're looking forward to this summer. So why don't we get started with Angela?
Thank you so much for having me. It's wonderful to be here with you all. My name is Angela Dunleavy. I'm the CEO of Fair Start. We are located in Seattle and work around the Seattle region. Our mission is to disrupt poverty, transform lives, disrupt poverty, and nourish communities through food, life skills, and job training. So what we do primarily is work with individuals who are experiencing homelessness, poverty, systemic barriers, incarceration, mental health, drug abuse, alcohol abuse, and work to help those folks get the self-empowerment skills, the job training, the financial literacy, thanks to a partnership with BECU, technical literacy, and get onto their path to more stable and then more mobile careers. Oh, and my summer, what do I want to do this summer? So I did the COVID garden and I actually did the COVID cabin. So I'm looking forward to spending some time out in the wilderness in Mount Baker, around the Mount Baker area, at the summer cabin.
Great, thank you, Angela. Karen?
Hi, everyone. My name is Karen Wilkins-Mickey. I'm the Vice President of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. My pronouns are she, her. And it's so interesting. I'm going to share just our mission for community for the purposes of this conversation. Really using our unique and powerful platform to educate and empower and encourage our region and our community. And I think one of the things that I think about is how we leverage our platforms to amplify those that we can help support more, because we have such a large platform, and using that intentionally is really what we do. And so empowerment is actually part of our mission for our community work. So I think that's really important for the purposes of this conversation. And let's see, what I'm looking forward to this summer. I want the rain to stop. I'm just looking forward to like some days where some sun peeks through. And my husband has an AAU basketball team that travels and they go to sunny places. So I plan to tag on to some of that to get some sun in there. But that's what I'm looking forward to.
Awesome. Thank you, Karen. Brenton?
Thank you so much, Jackie. Thrilled to be here with everybody. My name is Brenton Peck. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm a director at the Financial Health Network. We are a national nonprofit organization that's based in Chicago that works with companies to improve people's financial outcomes. And we do this by providing national research, consulting with different companies, and getting professionals together to discuss what works and what doesn't, to promote a dialogue, an understanding of how they can make a positive impact in the communities that they serve. Something I'm looking forward to this summer, playing terrible golf, water skiing behind my father-in-law's pontoon boat, and watching my beloved Cubbies likely lose at Wrigley Field in person.
That sounds like fun. Thank you, Brenton. So let's get started with some questions for all the panelists. So as you think about the theme of tonight's event, empowering with purpose, when you hear that phrase, what does empowering with purpose mean to you? And why don't we start with Brenton this time?
Yeah, to me, empowerment with a purpose is about arming people with the right tools to thrive. And it's about understanding that each of us, each person has unique needs related to our financial health. And what may work for me as a person might not work for Angela, and might not work for Karen.
That's great. Angela?
At Fair Start, we talk a lot about empowerment and what it means to live in your greatness. And for the individuals that we work with, a lot of hardships have fallen in their paths, whether it's because of the choices that were made for them, in the case of many of our youth, or the choices that were made by them. But what I think ends up happening when you go through significant periods of trauma, when you go through deep poverty, when you experience homelessness or incarceration, is you lose some of yourself, and you lose that belief that you can be more, that you can achieve. And so I think the power that we try to bring out is that recognition of your own values. We have a wonderful staff member here at Fair Start, that really talks about being the writer, producer, and actor in the greatest role of your life. And I think that really helps ground people who have otherwise had not a lot of stability in their lives. And so empowerment with purpose for us really is the heartbeat of our mission, and how we do our work, and how we show up, and how we hope our students feel when they leave, that they can do more, that they can succeed, that they can fail and still be loved, that they can fail and still move forward, and that they have some small wins, and they do that because they get that deep empowerment for themselves. So it's really very, very much at the core of who we are.
That's great. Thank you for that, Angela. Karen?
One of the things, I've only been here a season and a half. Our years are by seasons, so that's why I said a season. But and it's really interesting. One of the things that I said when I first started was, what's your why? What is the why behind everything that you do? And if I can't answer that, then I shouldn't be doing it. If I don't know why I'm doing something, and everything that we do needs to have purpose, intention behind it, because in order to make positive change and to move things forward, you have to have that purpose, and you have to have that intention behind it. And I love exactly what both Angela and Brenton was saying, is that how you have to give people the tools to do that. You can't just tell people, go out and make that happen. You have to really give them those tools so that they can be successful. At the Seahawks, we do all good things for all people. We have fun. We bring joy and fun to people. When you think about that, we want to continue to do that, but we need to scale back and think about, like, how do we provide purpose around what we're doing so that we have a deeper impact in all the things that we're doing. And so it means a lot. I think I'm gonna steal empowerment with purpose for like everything, because I think that's a wonderful tagline to everything that we do, just as embedding this work, diversity, equity, and inclusion work, into people's work day to day. I think doing that with purpose is very important. So I hope I answered that question.
You did. Thank you. Gosh, that all the answers resonate so much with me, and of course BECU, and the reason why I continue to be at BECU as well. So Brenton, we're going to pivot a little bit and talk about, gosh, it feels like we're slowly emerging yet again from the pandemic. only to face rising inflation and other economic uncertainty. Can you help us set a stage for the current view of consumer financial health and what challenges and or opportunities are people currently facing?
Yeah, I can try. It's a big question. And you really can't avoid an inflation conversation these days with family, with friends, or at work, because it is truly taking a toll on people's financial health. The challenges are obvious when it comes to inflation. Things cost more than we're used to paying. But I also think that it's important to recognize other factors in this equation related to people's all around financial health or stability. For instance, more people are employed in higher paying jobs this year compared to last, which is great. And consumers across the board are still spending less as a symptom of the pandemic. This moment in time, however, has also given people a jumpstart to reevaluating their lifestyle, needs, and wants related to their financial futures. Our organization gets to measure the financial health of people in America at a household level and across the country. So we think about financial health when somebody's day to day financial activities allow them to handle unexpected emergencies and plan ahead for the future. So, in the aggregate, in the total, Americans' financial health has modestly improved year over year as stimulus payments and other government interventions reach those in need. But this is still really nothing to celebrate quite yet, as 2/3 of the country is struggling with their financial health. And we also know that historically marginalized groups, including women, Black, and Latinx households, have not experienced the same financial health gains as their white household peers. And this I see as a great opportunity for institutions of all shapes and sizes to play a more instrumental role in providing an equitable environment that allows all people to thrive.
Great. Thank you so much for that, Brenton. Angela, knowing that many jobs, especially those in the renders, in the restaurant, in the hospitality industry, were impacted deeply by the pandemic, does what Brenton shared with us resonate with you? And if so, how are you working with those? How are you working to meet those challenges and opportunities and empower the people that you serve?
Well, thank you for the question. It really resonated with me when we start talking about those most disproportionately impacted by COVID being those who are most disproportionately impacted by systemic inequities and poverty. And we saw that deepen during the pandemic, not only because those are traditionally frontline workers, grocery store, the restaurant workers. They were also the ones who were most likely to be getting sick, and the least likely to have adequate health care, and the least likely to have adequate time off. And so we have, really had to transition the way that we do our training and where we are placing folks into jobs. And it gave us an opportunity to really reflect on where are the jobs that are the most stable for those who have the least amount of stability in their lives. And so during the pandemic, we switched to a virtual training in really arming people with the tools that they need to get any job, not just a restaurant and hospitality job. So that's really focused on the transferable skills around technical literacy. We talked a little bit about financial literacy and just those really soft skills, or some people call them, those executive functioning skills, showing up on time, managing conflict, so that we can help direct the clients that we work with to the more in-demand jobs. And you're right, the restaurant sector is taking a slow recovery. If you have gone to your favorite restaurant or takeout, there are probably a few things on your menu that you can't get, and that's due to supply shortages. You probably noticed prices are going up. And there are maybe shorter hours because it's a really tough time to staff. And so what we are looking at are what are the adjacent sectors that are still in food where we can help our clients and our students, graduates find meaningful work. And so we have done a lot of work with our great local grocery stores, our local food warehousing. We look into the future and see a role for logistics in the work that we do. And we're really excited to be talking very preliminarily to Karen and the team at the Seahawks about ways that we can partner, with local employers and, real champions of the work that we do. So it's really everything that Brenton has talked about deeply impacts the people that we work with. And if you'll indulge me for one more moment, pre-COVID and pre-inflationary period, a parent living in King County, where we're located, if you're a single parent with a child under the age of 5, you need to make $36 an hour to be self-sustaining. If you have 2 children, that's $48 an hour. And the gap that we have is so wide. And so that need for financial planning and that need for financial literacy is so much more important to those folks, and every dollar counts. And so I think that what we're seeing with inflation and where the economy is heading is really scary for a lot of people.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate the answer. And gosh, you cued me in to talk about the Seahawks and the work that they're doing with their partners and out in the community. So Karen, can you share with us, how do the Seahawks think about the role of sports teams, the role that they play in impacting community? What are some of the investments, whether it's, again, time or resources, that the Seahawks are making towards the empowerment of communities?
Yeah, I mean, I know I started to talk about it a little bit too, and Angela shared some as well, but we have such a huge responsibility. We have huge visibility. We can get the word out. We can amplify where others may not be able to. And one of the things that's so important is it's not about us. It's not about the Seahawks and what we're doing. It's about Fair Start and what Fair Start is doing and how we can help Fair Start and the programs that they're having in place to make them, leverage our services, because we have the availability, right? It's finding those opportunities to partner. It's also finding ways to partner with our partners like BECU and doing amazing things to give back to the community, finding ways to do things differently, right? And smart and intentionally. Our impact report just came out, and it was so impressive, because what you don't measure, what you don't manage or measure, what you don't measure doesn't get managed. That's what I meant to say. So our impact numbers were so impressive. And again, this is not about us, it's who we impacted. So we had 109 player and legend community appearances. That's big, because people want to have access to people that they normally would not have access to. We had 147 community events. We gave $1.8 million in cash donations, 228 charitable organizations we supported, 16,000 in-kind donations, and 68,410 individuals were impacted in the community. That speaks volumes. And again, we can go through what all of those are, but the point is that we touch the lives of those individuals, whether it was through donations, whether it was through our time volunteering, whether it was through donations to an organization that needed it at that time, whether it was going out and helping an organization or a company who was broken into the night before, then we had visited them and gave attention to the organization specifically because it was a small women-owned business and we wanted to give back to them, and then they got broken into the next day and we replenished everything back. We didn't do a story on it. We just wanted to give back to that small business. That's the other thing. When you think about how the access, women and minority-owned businesses, they don't have the same access to large accounts like Seahawks. Well, I've put something in place where they're going to, and we have tools in place where before you call a vendor, you are going through this list of our women and minority-owned businesses, because they're small businesses that don't get that opportunity. Every single month, we do a line to our heritage, and we go, okay, well, if it's Black History Month, we're going back into that Black community, and we're going to give business back. And not just, and we don't want to stop there. And we do a receipt and receive, where all the people who purchase from small Black-owned business, like I'm just using that as an example, they turn their receipts in, we give back to the community. We raised over $30,000 for Black History Month. We raised over $25,000 for women, and we work collectively with the sports teams, and we're doing it again for Asian American Pacific Islander Month. And so those are the ways you give back. And it's like we have this huge platform. Leverage it, use it. The other thing that's really important is, and talk about it a little bit later, is our commitment to racial equity and justice. The things that are important. When I started here, I saw that we put statements out. A lot of companies put statements out. But what does it mean? What does it mean behind the statement? What are the actions that we're going to take and do behind the statement that we're going to advance racial equity? Well, we came up with our focus areas around investing in advancing economic stability, where it comes in, where we're working with Fair Start, with Angela, fostering inclusive culture, what we're doing internally for our own company and our own people to make sure that they have access and opportunities. And we're going to combat racism, and we're going to continue education as much as possible around that. We're not letting it go. And so I think those are the things, making things actionable and going out and saying, we're going to do these things well, like partnering with organizations like Fair Start, Youth Achievement Center, Community Passageways, Choose 180, and saying, you know what, we're going to help you. We're going to help end homelessness here in Washington State. We're going to help with the poverty issue in Washington State. We're going to help with the economic stability and bringing that to people. And we're going to do our part. And we're going to work with our players as well. So we want to shine a light on it so that we can help fix it or be a part of making it better.
Great. Thank you so much, Karen. And God, the things that you just started talking about and the investments that the Seahawks are doing, it's a really good segue to this next question. Like many, as you said, Karen, at BECU, we've made some equity and inclusion commitments, right? For us, we're focusing on embedding equity and inclusion into everything we do as an organization. And that includes introducing equity commitments. So last year, for our employees, our members, and our community. For our members, especially, our focus is to provide greater access to banking services in BIPOC communities to support healthy financial futures for all. Understanding that systemic inequities are barriers to empowerment. What challenges do you most often see in your work? And how does your organization overcome these challenges in the work that you do? So why don't we start with Brenton?
Sure, happy to. And listen, the idea of equity and financial health is a really big topic. And frankly, it's something that I don't think should have played out this way when it comes to equity and empowerment, because this is such a relatively new topic of conversation with different companies that we work with. I mean, clearly, at least from where I sit, there's still this misalignment regarding what consumers need from different communities, and what they're asking of companies, and then what companies are actually providing. And that's multi-pronged, right? I see this as a major challenge, and I hope and believe that it's organizations like ours that are steering the dialogue in a more positive light. But it's other organizations like Karen and the Seahawks who are making it so. I've been doing this work for a while now, and I get to consult with different banks and credit unions and tech providers that often raise this topic and others. And this is why I clearly see this mismatch here. Whereas, say, a bank, as an example, may think that what consumers across different races, ethnicities, and genders need might look similar from a banker's desk. And we know that's simply not the case. So the positions that many companies are taking, or the dollars that they're throwing at different causes, are not always landing with their target audience. And I think to overcome this, we and others need to provide more actionable advice and change the narrative without fear. Frankly, whether it's the conversation around equity in financial health or something related to historically marginalized populations, this unfortunately seems like it's going to be a slow burn. But I'm confident that we'll get there by exempling successful practices among leading institutions like Angela's and like Karen's and others who are committed to seeing something happen.
Thank you, Brenton. Karen, anything to add?
No, I feel like I added a lot. I mean, in terms of challenges, I mean, it's just, this work takes time. It's hard. When I think about, my role at the Seahawks is focused overall on D&I strategies for the organization to really drive inclusion within our organization and making sure that people can bring the best of themselves to work every single day, and working very closely with our community team on what we're focusing on externally. But I think this work is going to take time. When we're talking about disparities, racial disparities, and the challenges that are out there, it doesn't get easier. Like, you can think back 5 years ago, 2 years ago, and we were having the same conversations. It's just worse because we now have a pandemic that's in the way of all of this, and it's just worse. So that means it's going to take more people, more focus, more intentionality, more people to focus on it. And even if it's hard, it doesn't matter. It's hard, but we will see the reward at some point. We have to continue to chip away. And to Brenton's point, if organizations like the Seahawks, or what Angela's doing to literally help support people who need homes, who need work, who need skill set. Those roles, those jobs are so hard. But if companies like ours can help open a door and pave the way, we need to do that. And we need to find why we can, not look at why we can't, not look at why it's hard, but look at what we can, how we navigate it, and why we have to do it. Not a matter of like, well, how do we do it? It's just, we have to do it. So I feel like the challenges are sadly, they're going to continue to be for some time, but that's okay, because you have people like Brenton doing what he's doing. You have people like Angela doing what she's doing. You have people like you, Jackie, doing what you and I do to try to bridge a gap, create the opportunities, give access. And then, if we all continue to work on that and chip away, we will make progress and have impact. And it's going to take time, but it's being intentional and focused.
Thank you, Angela. Thank you, everyone. We'd like to end this conversation before we go to the audience with a little bit of inspiration. So we'd love for each of you to share with us what has kept you inspired each day to drive such important work, and what continues to motivate you. And Angela, if you wouldn't mind starting.
Sure, I'm happy to. Well, one of the things that I love most about my job is I spend time with every single program participant that comes through Fair Start. So I have an hour, sometime within their programming, where I hear from them. I hear what it is that they want to get out of the program, the job that they might want to have, the family they might want to be reunited with. And those stories honestly move me forward. And just earlier this week, I met with a cohort, and it always happens that they, at the end of our time together, they'll give me their word of the day or quote of the week. And I always find that it's something that just, the stars align and I need to hear from my own self, right? So during the pandemic, it might have been like, you know what, just keep going, like one foot in front of the other, or, you know, just believe in yourself, believe you can do it. And it's such a gift that I get from the students who do that. And then I also think, you know, since the pandemic, Fair Start's produced over 5 million meals for the community at large, and seeing cards and stories come in about how those meals have impacted someone's life, where they may have not had a secure way to get their food. They may not have known where they would get their lunch or dinner meal, or they wouldn't have had one. It's really meaningful in not only healing the trauma of the murder of George Floyd, the racial reckoning that happened in 2020, all of the trauma that we've seen since the pandemic started, and to be part of that nourishment of the community has been super inspiring and helps move me forward every day. And I'm looking forward to being out of this pandemic area, but there is a lot of work ahead, and there are a lot of hungry people, and there are a lot of people who need another chance to get onto that path towards success and mobility.
Thank you so much. Brenton?
Yeah, I'll keep mine short. What inspires me to do this work, you know, for me, it's the examples that we see in the market throughout different companies. The strong signals that businesses are now aligning their business success or metrics to the success of people. All of that is really inspiring. And we're seeing this play out through a few different channels with employees, with customers, and with the communities that they serve. And it's motivating to me personally to help define a brighter tomorrow that works for all people. Because historically, whether you are a financial institution, a large-scale employer, or even one of those in higher education, we haven't done a great job of providing an equitable environment. And now I work to build on the momentum that Angela and others have already indicated to help create that level playing field so that all people can thrive.
Thank you. Karen?
You know, I can't imagine doing anything else. People ask me all the time, like, is it hard? You know, is it because you're carrying so much? There's so much responsibility on this position. There's so much like weight on it, so much spotlight, right? I couldn't do anything else. I wouldn't do anything. I've been doing this for over 20 years now, and I cannot imagine doing anything other than helping to enrich people's experiences. And now I'm with the NFL, and I get to see the smiles. Like, I see the impact because I see the result of all that we're doing by the faces of young kids. You know, we're doing a day of service next week. 90% of the school is on reduced or free lunch at that particular school. And we're just going to bring a little fun and swag to the school. But they see a player, they see us, and they're like, oh my gosh, the Seahawks have visited us. You know, and it's just bringing light to people's lives, whether it's internally or externally. Having an employee walk in my office and telling me, you know what, when you did that story, that and you amplified the voices of, you know, you name it, I had no idea. I didn't understand. And now I have empathy and compassion, and I ask the questions that I never would have asked before. Or I have an employee that comes in and says, remember when you did that training around mitigating bias? I hired someone who was nothing like me. A year ago, I would have hired the person exactly like me. It's being intentional about our 12 commitments around advancing racial equity and being brave enough to put out on our site and publicly in our social media that, hey, the Seahawks are committed to racial equity and justice, and we will focus on the Black community because they have been underserved and no attention has been given. Years of historical disparities that continue to happen. And we've put a statement out, not just a statement, but commitments of what we are going to do. And we're going to do them. And it will take time, but we will do them. And that makes me so happy. And it gives me hope. It gives me hope. I always say hope is not a strategy, but I believe that the work that I'm doing is impactful and change is coming. And it may be slow and incremental, but I see it. I see it in bite size, and I'll take it. I'll take it, so it keeps me going. So the people.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for sharing that. So now we're going to turn to questions from the audience. So it's your turn, members. And I'm going to bring my colleague, TJ, into the space. Hi, TJ. So TJ, do you have some questions for us?
Yes. First of all, I want to say this has been an amazing discussion and it's very inspirational. So thank you very much for all of this. We do have some questions in the chat. You're all clearly empowering the people you serve. What are some of the ways you see your organizations are empowering your employees and other internal stakeholders?
Yeah, so why don't we have Angela, do you mind starting?
Oh gosh, yes, but can you repeat it? Because this is where I'm like a golden retriever and I saw my name in the chat and I immediately lost my train of thought. So, and saw the question that popped up in the chat. So can you repeat that for me?
Yes. The question is, you're all clearly empowering the people you serve. What are some of the ways you see your organizations are empowering your employees and other internal stakeholders?
So that, I think, is the question that is so important right now, because we cannot do our work without the great people who work alongside us. And, we're seeing the great resignation and the things that we've tried to do. Being in a virtual space has been really difficult because we've had people who have been on site from day one, who never took a day to work from home. And so finding ways to connect with and empower and celebrate those frontline workers who have been producing meals has been a really important part of our work. And, we tried to do that through back when we couldn't gather, it was, if we could get different food deliveries out to them. I will tell you the things that keep our staff motivated, both those who are working in our kitchens and on the front lines and those who are able to be in a virtual space, is that coming together. So we meet every single Friday virtually to do shout outs. Pre-COVID, we did this with our students, and now we're doing it with our staff. Any opportunity that either I have or our senior leadership team has to go and work side by side with folks in the kitchens, we really try to do that. And then what we've done, I think, from a race equity perspective and just an employee experience perspective, is really encourage people to lead the work. And so we started our race equity journey back in 2018. And we have a third of our staff are actively involved in self-guided work groups. We now have, I think 4 or 5 different affinity groups. And I think that what that allows is when leadership can cede a little bit of that power and really give to the teams themselves to decide how they want to show up and be in the workspace. It's really empowering for everyone. So that's just a little bit of the way that we're doing it.
Great, thank you, Angela. Karen or Brenton, do you want to share?
Yeah, I'd love to chime in. At Financial Health Network, we're a national nonprofit, and one thing that we've successfully done to help empower our employees is create a culture of inclusion and belonging among our staff. It allows us to bring our true selves to work and understand where we fit in this matrices in order to bring the best out of everybody on the team. I'd also say that we work with a lot of employers on this topic of employee financial health. I mean, heck, we put a stake in the ground and we defined the term, but we also took our own medicine. And we had to understand how the financial health of our own employees stacks up against the rest of the population or different communities in the population. And by understanding what some of the financial health needs or pain points of our employees are, we were able to build solutions that matter to us. And that's a pretty radical shift if you think about it, from the way that employees have historically provided pay and benefits. It was always what works best for the employer. And I think we're one of the organizations now who are leading the charge to take a more employee-centric approach to what people actually need.
That is so great, Brenton. And I think it's that whole saying of, you have to start in your own home, right? So really appreciate that. Karen, do you want to chime in?
Yeah, really quick. I mean, everything that you all said is pretty much the same in terms of, it's important that the employee's voice is heard and important that decisions are made based off what employees want and need. Following the pandemic, but prior to the pandemic, the Seahawks were a 9-to-5 type organization. And then obviously during season, you just don't go home, but we're not like that anymore. The pandemic, we were 2 years working from home remotely because it was all about protecting the player. And so we slowly came back, but we knew we couldn't come back the same way. So we made sure that employees understood that, hey, what works for you? Like, we become a hybrid organization. It's built trust. It's opened up more creativity for people. I think people feel more excited about being able to stay home if they need to, come in if they need to. The other thing that's been nice is we're no longer siloed we were stuck to our floor. Now we are able to, blend between the first floor is players, second floor is coaches, and third floor is the staff. And now we can roam throughout the building. I mean, it's so odd having freedom, but the employees told us what they needed. And I think that's really important to listen to what employees are asking for, and making those adjustments, because that's a big deal for the NFL, because it's typically, you come in, like, it's a very rigid structure of how it is. And we're just completely blowing that up and doing things differently, and just really listening to the employee's voice, and a lot of what everybody else said. So I won't repeat all of that, but the resource groups, diversity councils, and giving people access to share what's important to them.
That's great. Thank you, everyone. TJ, do you have another question for us?
Yes, there is another question. What is the best way for people to make a positive impact on an individual level, in your opinion? Do your organizations have volunteer opportunities?
Well, why don't we go with Karen, since you already talked about some of the things you're doing.
Do you mean volunteer opportunities? Like, do I have volunteer opportunities within the organization, or like for other people to volunteer? I wasn't sure what you're saying. You mean people in the organization to volunteer?
I believe the question is more for people in the organization to volunteer, it looks like.
Yeah. So we have an annual day of service, where we literally, all of us, we all go out, 5 buses, different places throughout Seattle to volunteer. And we have 5 unique opportunities. One was one that I created for really focused on racial equity. That's what I wanted to make sure we did, is have a day of service that was giving back that way. But we offer volunteer. I mean, we are always, we're always in the community volunteering. And one of the things I think we could do a better job at, though, as a community team and DEI, we're out all the time. We should, I think we have an opportunity to make more employees aware of all of the opportunities to go out and volunteer. We also didn't have, at the time, a program in place where if you volunteer, we give hours. And we just implemented that. So now people would be more, they always have wanted to volunteer. That's not true. We do so much. I was the worst person, because you see Seahawks out all the time doing things in the community. It's like, so we always have opportunities for people. I think what's important, though, is for us to have programs to give back. So we give 8 hours back if you volunteer. Things like that weren't in place, like other companies I've worked for. So I like that we're going in that direction. But hopefully I answered it. We're everywhere.
So I'm going to take the opposite side of that and say we would love for
go
you
for
to
it.
come and volunteer at Fair Start. All of you who are tuning in tonight. So pre-COVID, we worked with about 3,600 volunteers a year, and we have all sorts of things that we have volunteers do. But even during COVID, we still have been engaging around 1,200 volunteers a year, and it's really exciting that we're coming back this year with. We now have volunteers back in our buildings, in our kitchens. We have volunteers going out to local farms, doing gleaning to bring fresh fruits and vegetables into the kitchens. We have opportunities for writing those meals that I mentioned. We have volunteers who write like handwritten notes of encouragement, and we put those in our hunger relief bags. We have people who come in and work with our students on job skills, resume writing, mock interviews. I mean, we just had a conversation this week about how we're engaging our volunteers. So if there's anyone who's listening, just head to the fairstart.org website, and there will be an opportunity to register to volunteer. And I will tell you, for your local nonprofits, those hours turn into dollars. That is actually a hugely impactful way. If that's part of your family's giving plan, is to give some hours, it really helps out. And then I think, just from an individual level, how you make an impact in your own organizations, give one of your frontline people a chance, right? Be a mentor and a sponsor, write a letter. Like, you don't need to spend a ton of hours. Write a letter of recommendation for someone who does a good job. And they can take that forward and move it on with them in their next job. So I think that's a way you can engage with Fair Start, but that's also a way that you can individually give back, I think, within your own organization.
That's great, Angela.
If I can chime in quickly, I'll answer the question around volunteer opportunities. We don't have anything quite as formal as what Karen illustrated. However, we really try and foster this environment of trust and flexibility, which is a way that many organizations are going, that allows people like me and others to volunteer on different committees or boards, or help with VitaSite or volunteer individual tax preparation, things of that nature, where it's our way of giving back to the community in our own right. The first part of your question, though, was around how do you suggest people make a positive impact on an individual level? I've been asked this a couple of times, and I always fall back on the same response. And we live in such a polarized environment at the moment. Have empathy and open up a general line of communication of help. Kind of regardless of where you sit on the spectrum. I think it goes a long ways if you can bring your individual subject matter expertise to the table to touch an individual's life. And you'd be amazed at where you sit on different levels of podiums in terms of that expertise. And I wouldn't be afraid to ask for help looking the other direction.
Great, thank you. Gosh, so much information, and highly encourage folks to contact folks at Fair Start if you're looking for a volunteer opportunity. That sounds like something that we may have to tap into as well. So I know that we may not have been able to answer everyone's questions. So if you do have a question that you would like us to address, please send it to communityrelations@becu.org. I just want to share my gratitude to the panelists for having been a part of this discussion. Gosh, some of my takeaways is really that, looking at the screen, just really thinking about collective impact, thinking about the investments that institutions like the Seahawks can make with, racial equity lens or an equity lens in general. Gosh, the impact that can have in our communities. Angela, the continued work that you do with Fair Start. I have family that works in the hospitality industry and in restaurants, and I just know the struggle right over the last 2 years through the pandemic. So just so grateful for the mission, the work that you continue to do in empowering those folks with purpose. And Brenton, geez, I'm the first one in my family to break a cycle of generational poverty, right? And I just think, the role of financial institutions and the role of your institution in building a network and really embedding equity and embedding that lens of really looking at systemic inequities is just so important. So collectively, this group continues to do a lot. We'll probably has already done a lot, but just really grateful to have had an opportunity to have this discussion. And again, if folks in the audience didn't get a chance to hear, if we didn't get a chance to get to your question, please send that over to us. I want to thank everyone for joining us this evening. Again, a special thank you to Karen, to Angela, and to Brenton for sharing their experiences with us tonight. We hope to see you all next year. I hope that you have a great evening. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.